Welcome to the Lust for Life podcast, where Jake and I reflect on each of our weeks and we kind of share some of the conversations that we had throughout the weeks. And like every other, we just had such a great week full of lots of fun activities and challenges. And I'm trying to think what we did this week. We send out Christmas cards, or we're starting to, for Lucy's Instagram followers. And so we did a lot of Christmas cards this week for Lucy and her friends. So that was pretty fun. We printed them out at Walgreens. We actually took Lucy into Walgreens, and then we gave one of the cashiers one of Lucy's greeting cards, and they thought it was so cute. And she was like kind of in my sweatshirt. I was kind of hiding her, but not really. But they thought it was really, really cute. So Jake's mom also came by last week and brought us a bunch of charms. And I forgot to share this on our last podcast. They're like 1 to 2 inch charms, and it's like we have like a little hedgehog like laying on his back.
Live life like a hedgehog.
Yeah, it says live like, and there's like a little card that comes with it. Live life like a hedgehog, and there's like an astronaut, like, and what does that one say? You don't remember?
Let me check.
Jake's checking. But there's like a goat and a firefly and then a camera. What does it say, Jake?
The astronaut is the little moon man.
The little moon man, like an adventure.
Just like the moon man reached for the stars.
Yeah. Super cute. So we don't really have Christmas decorations because we have such a small apartment and we're moving in a couple of months. And we have like a Christmas candle and that's it.
Which smells so good.
Which it does smell really good. But we decided to make a nativity out of these little charms. So they're just sitting underneath our TV. And the hedgehog is Jesus. And there's a goat. And then the astronaut's the wise man. And then the firefly's the star. And then there's like an old little gnome. And then there's, what was the other?
A doll.
There's a little doll. That's Mary. And then the gnome is Joseph. So that's our Christmas decoration. I just think it's really funny. It does actually help though. Like every time I see it, I do think of the nativity, and I actually do think of like the reason for the season, honestly. And so it does help. Oh, and then the picture or the cameras in front of the nativity scene, like taking picture of it. It's kind of funny. Anyway, what else happened this week for you?
Well, UNC ended their 3-game losing streak. Finally beat Georgia Tech yesterday, which was nice. Oh, one of my old friends from my mission and from work, he just got accepted to Wake Forest Medical School, just a little over an hour away in Winston-Salem. So he came out and visited, said hi to us for a little bit. This week
he served here in North Carolina, just like you.
Yeah. I busted out the cold weather bike gear. Well, first, it looks just so good. I just had to wear my cold weather bike jersey on a run. That was cold.
Did?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
It was so, because the jersey is so comfy. It's fleece lined. It is so warm, so
soft.
comfy. It was so nice to wear on a run. Even though I have all the bike pockets in the back, I didn't care. It was so nice. And then it felt just good to get out on a bike. Because it was almost 2 weeks since I last rode. Mm-hmm. Just with everything. But
I'm just recovering still.
Yeah, but I tested out Tennessee's bike, the Speed Concept, and that was nice. Mine is just a traditional road bike. Tennessee's is the specific triathlon bike, which is interesting that Tennessee's bike is heavier than my bike.
Significantly heavier.
So I was always flying up all the hills when we would go ride. And then now I was on Tennessee's bike on my little ride yesterday. I'm man, I could really feel the weight difference going up the hills. But then on the flats and on the descents,
so fast.
Cruising, because it's just so aerodynamic.
And just more weight.
Yeah. But that was good. I just keep thinking about the Ironman Florida and just everything I want to do different and just how I want to be better and improve. I really want to do this one in Texas in April if just my schedule and everything allows for it, which I should find out any day now, they keep saying. But I really want to do that because it's just eating at me. There's so much.
Every time we bring it up, it's a rant of half an hour about how we didn't do it right, and you really want it bad. You want to go back there and kick trash.
Bad. There's so much left on the table. I mean, I just want to be able to run through the transition. Even
today, when Jake was I want to get the thrill of running through transition because you just walk.
Yeah, it was just so bad. No, so it was that. I'm a big Cameron Haynes and his boy Truett Haynes. I'm a big fan of them, and they have Cameron Haynes' podcast, which is like the Keep Hammering Collective or whatever, but this was an episode from a while ago. But Truett Haynes talked about when he set the world pull-up record on it, and he just said something in it like for me, and I kind of thought, well, I'll just try to explain. Like, it's not just the physical preparation, but also, like, the mental preparation. And I thought I was mentally, like, super prepared for the Ironman. Like, yeah, I went out on a lot of sucky rides. Like, I broke David Goggins' 2013 pull-up record. Like, yeah, and that was awful. So, like, when things get hard, I know how to keep going. But on the bike, like, it got hard and I kept going, but I didn't keep going, like, as fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's
just a different level. When you hit that massive wall of just, like, complete exhaustion, it's just a different level.
Yeah, and it's trying to, like, looking back, I'm trying to think, like, was that, like, I just was mentally weak, or was it truly, like, I gave everything I had? I definitely think there's some component of mental weakness in there for sure with that. But I don't know. That's what I'm taking. I could talk about this, like Tennessee said, for a while right now, and just, like, really trying to analyze everything and trying to get better. But I can tell you, if I can do Texas in April... it'll be a different story. Man, my run was so slow, too. And, like, at the end, I just was trying to run and finish, but then I was, like, about to throw up. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop right now. But anyways, I could go on forever about just the mistakes.
We're going to kill it in Texas.
We'll kill it in Texas. But it was cool, too, listening to the podcast about Truett just going through his pull-up record. It just brought back a lot of memories of when I did mine. And that was just a fun time. Hard time, but it was a very fun time.
Yeah, that was definitely, like, a core memory. It was really fun to watch you do that. And I'm glad we were able to record that on the podcast so that we can listen to it later. And, yeah. I'm trying to think what else we did this week. I've been getting back into reading a little bit. I think maybe it's the cozy weather. I just picked up a book off my shelf. It's called, like, The Uglies. It's actually really... It's like a dystopic, utopic type of world. So it's kind of interesting read because it talks about how they manipulate people's faces to all look perfect according to society standards. And I find that I just find it interesting because I am involved in the cosmetic industry of injecting and aesthetics and nursing. And I do want to do that always part-time throughout my career. And so I found it as a really interesting read from an author's perspective and how it could play a role in dystopic, utopic societies.
I tried to ask this, like, a few times. Is it, like, concept, like... Because you're like, I can't explain this 300-page book so fast. Jake asked me...
So he started reading, like, it was, like, 300 pages in, and it's, like, a 350-page book. I don't know. There's, like, 50 pages left. And he started reading one of the pages to me. Because I asked him to read it to me because I was tired. And then he started asking me, what's this book about? And asking all the questions. And I'm like, okay, let's just go to bed. Because I don't want to explain the whole book.
But is it like if everyone's pretty, then everyone's ugly? Like from
it's
Incredibles,
essentially,
like if everyone's super, then no one is type of thing?
Kind of. Essentially, it's like the government controls everybody and wants everybody to be happy and have no, like, controversy. And so they make everybody pretty, but when they go through these cosmetic procedures, I'm not going to give away the book, but they do other stuff to make they change your brain as well.
Gotcha.
Like,
Something that's crazy then if...
They just want to make less contention, so they make everybody the same, essentially.
That's interesting.
And make everybody happy with what they look like, essentially.
But that's crazy that your happiness would depend on looking better than someone else. Is that what part of it stems from? Because that's crazy. If that's how you become happy.
Well, they're not happy.
Oh, okay.
They're not happy. Like, I think
because
it's just a dystopic book.
I have to read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like, geez, comparison is the thief of joy. So.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting read. It was interesting for me based off my career and reading it kind of from an outside perspective. And then I just picked up another book. Jake's dad actually gave it to me. It's called The Christmas Pig. It's written by J.K. Rowling. And I just really like her writing. And so it's been a cute little read for the holidays. But yeah, the dystopic book was interesting. And I just don't want to give anything away. But essentially, yeah, thief is the comparison of joy. And there's a lot of deeper meanings in that book. But I just don't want to give anything away. let's see, what else did we do? Oh, yeah. Do you want to explain your grandma a little bit?
Oh yeah, so my grandma has dementia, and it's just been getting worse and
Definitely
worse.
Alzheimer's, I think.
Yeah, and worse and worse. And now I guess the last few days it's got to the point where she doesn't really recognize my grandpa anymore, and is like, this is what I heard, and is like saying like, get out of my house, like leave, like who are you, where's my husband, type of thing. And
Yeah.
so I can even imagine how hard it is for my grandpa. And I talked to him a little, and it was a sad conversation.
Yeah.
And feel bad for him, for my mom, my aunt. It's just really hard for all of them. I don't really know. I'm trying to figure out like my role in this, and I think it's
just
Tennessee.
hard,
Tennessee and
yeah.
I talked. I think it's just like support, and just try to be there for my grandpa and my mom. But it's hard. I don't like engaging in a conversation that I know is gonna just result in like a tearing up like sad thing like over the phone, and I don't really. No, I don't know. So it's just hard for me just to try to navigate, like, what's my role? Like, how can I best help everyone out in this situation type of thing.
And I think just maybe calling and just being a listening ear is always never a bad option. Never offering a listening ear. It can never be wrong.
Yeah.
And just being there and supporting, and yeah, just hard. It makes you really think. It just makes you really think about priorities in life. And I've worked in a nursing home, and I worked in memory care for a while. That's where they kind of lock up. It's a locked unit for those with memory problems, so dementia, Alzheimer's, any of that. So they don't get lost, so they're kind of locked in this unit, so they can kind of wander around, and they're friends with each other. And but yeah, it's just like it's kind of like a different world in there. And yeah, it just really puts things into perspective for you. And I think I'm still digesting how I feel about it all too. It's just really hard. And I think that's why family is so important, because there's no way your grandpa could do that on his own. That's just not something somebody should do on their own and have to do that emotionally and physically. So we'll be there and support and do what we can. But I know we're not the only ones in this position, and we're not the only ones with family members who have dementia, and it's sadly a very common thing and just part of life. And I think I've actually said this before to Jake, but I think it's cool that we're able to podcast and share our experiences on here for when we do get older, and we can look back on these experiences that Jake and I are having. But also, like, maybe if we do start to lose our memory, we can listen to these and it will maybe help a little bit. But when you do lose your memory, you have your long-term memory still, but it's kind of that short-term or immediate memory that you lose first. And so you can't remember recent events as well as you can remember songs from many, many years ago. But I was thinking that it's cool that we have this opportunity to podcast and document our lives in this way so that we can hopefully look back on it.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, that's been something that we've talked about this week, and I think we're still figuring out how to navigate through that. And if you do, like, have a loved one going through the same thing, like, I don't know, we're a listening ear as we are for our family members, but it is definitely hard. It's almost like you're watching them kind of like fade away in front of you. The person you knew, they're not the same person you knew, and it's hard for them too, but it's just hard for everybody to watch the person they know and love kind of change so much. But you also shared some topics in Bible study this week.
Yeah, the Bible study this week was really good. We've been going through the book of James lately, and again, like, I just do this at school with just a bunch of like my fellow Christian medical student friends. We just get together at like lunch like once a week. We've been going through the book of James, and the first two chapters are so good, and we did the third chapter this week, which is just like incredible. takes like maybe a minute, 2 minutes to read. It is so good. But like some of the main thing is just like self-control, just like controlling your tongue, like controlling your mouth, like what you say. And then I also just correlate that with like controlling your temper. And it was so good. And it reminded me of once like Jocko one time said that losing your temper is the biggest sign of weakness. And I think it's so true, just to be able to control your emotions. And the tongue is such a powerful thing, or like your words can be so powerful. Like James uses the analogy of, think of a cruise ship so big. How big is a cruise ship? And then the like rudder that steers it is so small, but it has such power to be able to turn that whole cruise ship. Same with our tongue. It's such a small part of our body, but it has so much power. And then I also talked about a horse, which, I mean, you think about back then when James wrote this, like horses, those are some of the most powerful things that were on the world, on the earth. And you put a small bit in the horse's mouth, and that's how you can control the horse and steer it. And I just think it's so good, just like your words, like. And we were talking when my parents were here a couple weeks ago, just like random little things that we remember from like growing up, which might not have been like, I love my parents, they're great, but just like a random time when like a parent like lost their temper or something, which it happens. And we just talked about how like my mom was able to remember that happening with her parents. I'm like, oh yeah, this happened like one time with you guys, and how you can remember it so vividly. And that's just so how powerful your words are. And then just also, if they're that powerful when you hear like the negative words, think also how powerful they can be when you hear the positive words. And like you have an opportunity to just really have your words make such a huge difference in people's lives. And if you can control that and control your anger, it can turn something that goes like so negative, you could turn it into a completely positive situation. It also like use the analogy in like some of the verses that you can't have like salt water and fresh water in the same fountain. And like you can't be having like good words like testifying of Christ come out of your mouth, being an example of Christ come out of your, like, you can't be an example of Christ while you are like yelling at people and losing your temper and losing your cool. It just doesn't work like that. And so again, it's just just how important words can be, to not say bad or like to lose your temper, but to also be able to just spread like positivity with your words. What are your thoughts? Because you read that chapter.
Yeah, I read it this week as well. Well, the life coach that I hired last year, we're still really, really good friends. I was actually on her podcast this week. It's the Best of Yvonne podcast. And she always says, this is probably like the number one quote I hear her say. She says, we can either spread pixie dust or poison. And make sure we're spreading pixie dust, because our words are so powerful. And during my lessons with her, when she was coaching me, she had me read the 4 Agreements book. And it's like, if you do these 4 things in your life, you cannot go wrong. And it was, one of the agreements was something along the lines of, your words are some of the most powerful things that come out of your body. Meaning like your words to yourself and also the words to others, they matter, and choose them wisely. And this is something I don't think anyone is perfect at in this world. And we make mistakes with how we say things, and we make mistakes with the way things are interpreted. But it's just so important to realize how powerful our words are. And I've talked about this before in my other podcasts, but recently in Elon Musk's interviews, you can tell he really thinks about his answers. He really takes a minute to think about the questions that was asked to him, and then he really gives a really sincere answer. And I've gotten in this habit of just responding so quickly, and I've gotten this habit of giving an answer right away, when maybe it's okay to sit back, think about things, and then answer. Like if a situation comes up, I think it's a good habit just to think about how you want to respond and then respond, because naturally as humans, our natural response is usually emotional, which is usually not the best response. And for me, that's something I kind of talked about last week on my podcast, was I did emotionally respond to a situation that I'm not proud of. But I've learned that I am capable of responding emotionally, and I really need to learn how to just take a step back. And I'm still working on that, just spreading positivity. And I think something along the lines of that is also just making sure you're setting yourself up for success. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with good people. Make sure you like where you work. Make sure the people you work with have good values and they align with you. Because if your values just aren't aligned with the people you surround yourself with, you're going to find contention. And with that contention, it's really hard to spread that positivity and pixie dust and let your light shine and be as bright as it can be. It's just amazing when you get together with a group of people and your values are so similar, and it's like you guys you're unstoppable. I remember being in Miami at one of the conferences. I actually went to this conference with my life coach. And I remember having dinner with all these wonderful women, and our values were very similar. And the conversations we had, it was seriously like we were like unstoppable. Like we truly believed that we could do anything we wanted and we could change the world. And it's just so amazing when you align values like that. And so for me, I'm learning, it's so good to look at the good in people, and it's so good to love people for who they are, which is something I'm working at. But I learned for me that I need to be around people that share my values, because that's how I feel like my light also shines the brightest, is when I can share that pixie dust without that contention of disaligned values.
That reminded me of one thing. It was just a talk once that one of our church leaders gave, called Peacemakers Needed. And in it, he was a former cardiothoracic surgeon. He talked about when he was an intern, just like assisting in the operating room, one of the surgeons got so mad that he threw a scalpel that was covered in gangrene, the bacteria.
Just like necrotic bacteria.
Yeah, it like eats your skin. It's nasty. Threw it across the room, and it landed in his arm. Like it cut him, the knife, transferring the bacteria from that like patient to his arm. And then he said in the talk, even now, decades later, I find myself wondering if the contaminated scalpel that landed in my arm was any more toxic than the venomous contention that infects our civic dialogue and too many personal relationships today, which I just think just goes into just everything. Just like thinking about what you say before you said it, like when you talked about taking a step back.
Like, I feel like I really liked what you shared, because it's sometimes for me, I'm like, oh, I need to be able to react quickly and be sharp and clever and whatever. But I'm like, I need to be able to take a step back, because I naturally know I have it in me to react on my emotions. I don't think I would throw a scalpel at anybody, but I could share some words that I should not. And so I relate to that so much, because I know I need to take a step back, and maybe I'm sure a lot of other people do too.
Yeah, and I don't know if this necessarily applies, but I mean, I don't know, I can't remember who it is. Someone said like the wisest person in the room is usually the quietest, which I mean that can kind of apply. But
yeah, I think it does. I think like it definitely does, because they're the ones really taking things in usually and keeping an open perspective. But I think the other half of that is also the wisest person in the room listens and responds when appropriate, like when it's the best opportunity to share, and maybe when it's most effective, because you can share your opinion all you want to someone who is contentious, if that's even a word, and it will never penetrate them. But when you share your opinion when it's most effective, I mean, that's when things really happen, or when you're asked. When you're not asked to share your opinion, usually it's not warranted and they don't want it. So kind of went on a tangent there, but yeah, I like that we went over John 3 this week, and it's something I am most definitely not perfect at, but I've definitely gotten better. But yeah, any final thoughts about that?
No, that was It was great.
Good read. But yeah, that was pretty much our week. And we publish these every Tuesday. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.